This is an audio test for Community Access Television Services coming from Monroe County Courthouse at the County Commissioners meeting here on April 5th, 2023. Can you hear me back there?
I don't think I've ever seen the showroom this full of red and white before. Good morning. I wish to call to order the, I'm too excited, sorry, the April 5th meeting of the Monroe County Board of Commissioners. And we always start our meeting with our public statement, which will be read today by Commissioner Jones.
We, the Monroe County Board of Commissioners, renew our commitment to welcome and protect the rights of all people, regardless of age, race, color, creed, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, marital status, economic status, and national origin. And we affirm the right of every person to live peacefully and without fear, and we will fight and resist at every step discrimination and harmful policies, whatever their source. We also stand in support of our county public school systems, both RBB and MCCS. Sorry.
So we have a proclamation to read today. And before we start and honor this really incredible team, I'd like to say just a few words. Do you all know what a county commissioner does? I'm not sure. We make proclamations. We make proclamations. Yeah. We are actually the legislative and administrative branch of county government. And do you know that we are the first, and after 207 years, the only Board of Commissioners that is all female in the state of Indiana? So it's really fitting that we're the ones who get to celebrate the IU women's team today. So we didn't include everything we could have in the proclamation we're reading today. It would have been 18 pages long otherwise. But I want to give you a few examples of some of the things we omitted. First, we don't know who to recognize for who did all the braiding of your hair during the games. Pretty amazing. Second, the coach played her college basketball at Purdue. Is she forgiven? At the time, I must say, they had the better program, right? Being a D1 college athlete is hard work and takes incredible discipline to practice hours every day, attend class, study, watch films, spend hours on the road for away games, and experience the highs and lows of a very long season. The program is built on those who went before you, like Allie Patberg. Thank you, Allie, for returning to help build the IU Women's program. The first time I had the honor of hearing Coach Morin speak was several years ago at a fundraiser for Middle Way House. Coach talked about developing players, and her loyalty to the team and to the players was evident. She is a coach who helps players realize their potential and become leaders, skills that each of you will take with you beyond your years of playing basketball. And for each member of the team and coaching staff, your individual story, like the story of the IU Women's basketball program, still has many great chapters ahead. So thank you all for being with us today. And now I turn to my colleague, Commissioner Thomas, to get us started.
Right. Good morning. We have a proclamation for IU Women's Basketball Day in Monroe County. Whereas for the first time in its 40-year history, the Indiana University women's basketball team under head coach Terry Morin won its first outright Big Ten championship. And being true student athletes in fall of 2022, the women's team boasted a 3.62 GPA, the highest GPA among all IU athletic programs, winning the Herbert Cup. And for the first time in program history, the IU women's team had sellout crowds in Assembly Hall.
And this team set program records in points per game, 81.3, field goal percentage, 49.7, free throw percentage, 76.5, assists, 584, and blocked shots, 156. And there are also individual achievements that should be acknowledged. And here are just a few examples. Grace Berger is not only an honorable mention All-American, she is a Big Ten Distinguished Scholar, Mackenzie Holmes led the Big Ten in blocks, is an All-American, and is one of 4 finalists for the 2023 Wade Trophy, the most prestigious National Player of the Year award in college women's basketball. Chloe Moore McNeil, another Big Ten distinguished scholar, posted a better than 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. Sydney Parrish, the only player from Indiana and an Oregon transfer, led the team in scoring when IU beat Purdue on February 6, 2023. It would take another hour to acknowledge everything contributed by Lexis Bargarsy, Yarden Garzon, Sarah Scalia, Henna Sandvik, Keandra Brown, Mona Zarek, Ariel Wisney, Alyssa Aguirre, and Lily Meister. And for the first time, Indiana finished with 28 wins, was ranked number 2 in the country, and achieved the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
And whereas Coach Terry Moran was named the AP Coach of the Year, that's why I'm so emotional, yet another first for the IU women's basketball program. And Monroe County is proud of the determination, grace, and grittiness demonstrated by the incredible IU women's basketball team. Watching you has brought tremendous joy and pride to people throughout the county, especially to our girls and women. Thank you and congratulations on your many team and individual accomplishments. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Monroe County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim April 5th, 2023 as IU Women's Basketball Day in Monroe County, proclaimed this 5th day of April, 2023 by the Monroe County Board of Commissioners. At this point, we wish to recess our meeting because we have copies of a proclamation for each person who was involved in this effort. And we have some snacks, and I think we'd like the first proclamation to go to the copy of the proclamation to go to the coach. Yeah, please. than that. I think we'll go ahead and resume our meeting if we could. And by the way, if the tornado siren goes off, we will be cutting this short and headed down to the basement via the stairs. So be prepared and have a plan. So we are ready to start with department updates. Is Miss Kelly available, please? Yeah.
Good morning.
I'm sorry. So we'll start with Miss Kelly. Thank you.
Good morning. Monroe County remains in the low community level for COVID. According to the CDC, COVID-19 wastewater data shows that virus levels remain at or nearest the lowest point within the last 3 months. The FDA has recently approved Narcan in nasal form for over-the-counter sales. This was approved on March 31st, but it's not yet available, but it will be at some point. In the meantime, Hoosiers can also purchase naloxone at pharmacies without a prescription under a standing order from the Indiana Health Commissioner, Dr. Box.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments? And TSD, could you turn the closed captioning on our screen for us? That would be much appreciated.
No, I don't.
No questions. Thank you.
I don't have any questions either today. So thank you for giving us the update.
Thank you.
See you soon. Okay, it's now time for public comment. This is for items not on our agenda. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes. And would you, if you come to the mic, please state your name and whether or not you're a Monroe County resident.
I think she is.
Well, they won't get picked up. Is that pushed down incorrectly? I think Mr. Kreider might be able to help also.
It's lit.
Should we use the side table? Should we use one of the side mics? Angie? Okay. if you wouldn't mind, thank you. Yeah, sorry for the technical problems. I should point out that for every meeting, these microphones get reconfigured and they're joined in series, not in parallel. And so, yeah, it makes it hard.
This one works. Oh, okay. I just want to go on the record. I did not break that.
We'll take it under consideration.
Take it under consideration. I think TSD always kind of looks at me when they come in like, okay, what'd you do? I'm Judy Sharp. And ladies, the reason I'm up here today is I wanted to tell you what is happening with the disaster that we just had. You know that part of my job is when there is a disaster, I'm part of the initial response team, believe it or not. Didn't know that was part of the job description, but unfortunately, this is the 5th tornado that we've had to deal with. And so we went out yesterday. We didn't go out on Monday because, Lisa, your highway guys are so great. Of course, Jason's wife works for me and he says, don't go out on Monday. But we waited a day and we went out yesterday, not knowing if we could get through, but we did. And we went up to Wolf Mountain, which was the worst damage that we had. I mean, there was more of it. Wolf Mountain was basically wiped off the map on the north side of Wolf Mountain. From the time you went around after you got through all of the trees that were still standing, you kind of went around a little curve and there's a house there. After that, all the way to County Line Road, there wasn't one structure that was left standing. Why we didn't have deaths, no one will ever figure that out. It's a total miracle. The HT reported on that on Wolf Mountain, you had this family that had lived there for years and they called it Shrimville. And the first place that we could stop that was safe, it was you could tell at one time it was an absolutely beautiful homestead. They even have a pond in the front. Every tree was gone. But we could pull into the drive and they were working, the couple that lived there, and the friends and family were out starting to clean up. So we got out and introduced myself and told them what we do. And for all of you that don't know what I do is when this happens, I have the authority to remove things from the tax roll and we remove it immediately. It's not like you have to wait 10 years to see help. So because you pay a year in arrears, this year they will be paying their taxes for what was there last year. But I'm removing, that's what we're doing downstairs right now. We're removing every structure, house and barns, any structure off of the property rolls for 23, pay 24. It's about a dozen, maybe a little bit more. I didn't do a quick count before I came up, but what we do is just take it all off. It's called a 137R that I do. It's a disaster relief is what it means. And we will do that and get all of this done. I have to get it done today because tomorrow evening I'm sending all of my data to be downloaded because I have to send my Form 11s in 2-3 weeks. So I've got to get it all done so I can get it to the printers next week. So my staff is under a deadline. But that's what we did. It was really, it's very humbling to see what Mother Nature does. It's these people that lived, this one couple that we got to spoke to, their house was kind of still standing, kind of, it's going to be gone. But they woke up, they were in bed and the tornado hit their house and they were covered in glass. They had glass porch on the front. They had some scratches, but they, who knows why this happens. How the other people, there wasn't anything left of their homes or their cars. The Shrums that we talked to, they've lived there all their lives, of course. They had over 200 trees that were gone, just gone. Everybody, the public service was out there, whomever does their light. They don't have anything. They might today. I feel like I'm in the way. I know I wasn't because I was told to go ahead and do this, but I stopped and talked to one of the public service guys nice guy. And he came over to the car and he said, we're shutting down Wolf Mountain tonight, last night. We've got 80 people coming in to try to put everything back up overnight. Every post was gone. Everything was gone. So anyway, big shout out. Smithville was at the end of right on County Line Road. Smithville was out doing their thing, and there were two young ladies that were walking past me this way, and they stopped at the car, and I said, be careful, don't go back there, because it was really dangerous. She said, we're just going a little ways. She said, I told her who I was, and she said, would you mind being interviewed? And I'm like, and who are you guys? Who are you out here? Two young girls. It was with Smithville, and they put it on their social media. And so I spoke a little bit there, and all of you that know me and my deputies, Jennifer hollered, give her a time limit. And I know I have a time limit here. But anyway, everybody comes together in a situation like this, and just, this today isn't going to help anyone. And it's scary, but I wanted you guys to know, and that's what we're doing, and we do it all the time. And I also want the public to understand, to call in if I didn't get to you. We're pretty good at finding everything. We've been out to too many of these. We know what to look for now. There was some damage on Texas Ridge. We're taking about 6 places off as Texas Ridge. Wampler Road. I'm terrible with names. The people that live on Wampler, it might even be Wampler, they have 2 humongous barns and 100 feet barns. He lost a whole roof on one of the barns. But anyway, so we're helping them out. We will be sending information to all the people, but please, out there, anyone that has had major storm damage, I just can't help you if can't help on trees or anything like that, but on structures, we can sure help. But thank you, ladies. Any questions?
Sorry. No, but thank you so much. For
You were
what you
okay
do.
where you live?
Yes, other than being without electricity for 2 days.
Were you? Yeah. If I were selling generators, I would suggest go buy a generator, but I'm not selling generators, but boy, that's thing you can buy, people. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for getting out there immediately to take care of the residents that way. And yes.
I don't see others to speak, so I'm wondering if I might just say a couple words. I was out in that area Monday afternoon, and on behalf of the board, and I just want to, let everyone know that we're thinking of them, and they were really grateful for all of the support that they had out there. So Jamie Nibel, our emergency management director, is doing an amazing job, and she was running on fumes. So it was great. It was a great time to, we were handing out water and tarps and gloves, and the Bean Blossom fire department was amazing. They were out there helping. So it was really the community coming together. But the devastation is unfathomable, and they will take a long time to recover. But some amazing stories, amazing people, and we're really grateful that there weren't any fatalities because of this storm. So, but I do want to thank everybody who's pitching in and helping out, and want to deter and discourage anybody from going out to do a tourist stop. This isn't the time. They need help, and these are the folks that are already giving that help. So we appreciate them.
Well, and I want to thank Lisa Ridge and all of her crew, because they were out there immediately taking care of people, taking care of the trees that were down across the road, taking care of all kinds of things. And if you want to be helping, I was told that the best way to do that is through the Red Cross, is to make donations that way.
Although my understanding is the Red Cross shelter is closed now. So, I would, I'm not sure I would recommend that at this point, but but they do not need donations brought to the fire station or anything. And people have been very thoughtful and helpful, but they just can't manage all of that. So I'm sure that if there are some needs that you can watch on social media, and they'll be posting what they need, they're probably going to need some volunteer days and some help. And One of the things that we talked through was making sure that we had dumpsters available for the folks who are cleaning up, because that's a tough thing to deal with. But I think I would just watch social media and see if there are any requests for assistance. And yeah, the highway department did a great job getting out there. Great job. They really, I mean, we got through in the county pickup truck. So.
Thank you. And I'll pass that on. It's definitely not me. It's those crews out there. It's the management team out there. They were out there for 2 to 3 days nonstop. I know there was one road, I think Saturday had 75 trees crossing it. But they're out there to get the roads open so emergency services can get there. But kudos to all the crews that worked all weekend, the emergency responders. So thank you for acknowledging them.
Well, the roads have to be clear for people to get in to take care of the electricity and other things too. So they really are the frontline folks with all this. So. Okay, moving on. Since there are no other public comments, let's go on to our minutes.
All right, I move approval of the minutes from March 29th, 2023.
Second.
Are there any corrections or additions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All those in favor of approval, the minutes from March 29th, 2023, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of the claims docket, accounts payable April 5th, 2023, and payroll April, it would be the 6th, 2023. It is right. It is the 6th.
Tomorrow, Friday's the holiday. Right,
There you go.
okay.
Second.
And
Sorry.
we have Sarah Malone here with us to tell us about it.
Good morning, commissioners. The accounts payable total for April 5th, 2023 is a total of $1,478,265.44. And payroll for April 6th, 2023 is a total of $1,867,693.22, of which $1,311,473.51 is direct and $556,219.71 is indirect.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments?
No, I don't.
No questions. None from me either. It all looked pretty straightforward when I reviewed it. So is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, a call for a vote. All those in favor, approval of the claims docket, accounts payable April 5th, 2023, and payroll April 6th, 2023, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. I will note for the record that there were no reports included in this week's packet. So we'll move on to new business.
I move approval of an agreement with Effect TV Service. Fund name election, fund number 1215 in the amount of $2,500.
Second.
And is Ms. Brown here? Thank you. Yes, over because of the microphone. Thank you for joining us.
Can you hear me? Turn this one.
Oh, good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, I'll try to keep this brief. Good morning, commissioners. Let me first, if I can take a moment of privilege to acknowledge that early voting is underway here in Monroe County. Early voting began yesterday, and I can report that when I checked this morning, 85 people have taken advantage of early voting in Monroe County. We certainly hope for your viewing audience that spread the word. It is underway, and we are ready and waiting to welcome and receive you and have you take advantage of that opportunity. And so we use any public opportunity to remind everyone that this is the time. And so that is why I am here. One of the means that we do that is to have commercials that appear for those who have cable services. And so this is that time of year where we are asking you to sign a contract that you have in the past that allows us to do that. We take advantage of cable. We're doing the digital, which appears on your phone for those people who don't have cable. The information runs across your screen and it allows us to do voter education. This is our smallest election, but in many ways it's the most confusing because people who live outside of the city limits don't understand why they cannot vote in this election. So we have a commercial that shows the polling sites where you're going to be voting if you're eligible and asking you to check your voter registration and reminding you that only people who live within the geographic boundaries of the city of Bloomington are eligible to vote in this election. And so very standard contract, and I don't have anything unless you have a question for me. I appreciate your signing that contract.
Questions or comments?
No, I don't.
I'm glad you're doing this. Thank you. And is Ellisville also included?
The town of Ellisville does have some races.
Are they included on the advertising at all or?
I found this out attending an event in Owen County. Our commercials go all the way out to the county line. So people in Owen County have said, I saw you, and I didn't expect them to recognize me. So we do get that out, and the digital is what's limited to it's called, I learned a new term, geofencing. And so that is what is limited to the audience that we're trying to reach. So more rural homes may not see that on their phone, but I haven't seen it yet on my phone. So I don't know how many impressions we have or when the best time is for them to run. I leave that to our vendors to decide.
Thank you.
I did have a question, and this is just not about the contract per se, but because this is not an election that the non-urbanized residents vote in, does the town of Ellisville or the city of Bloomington pick up any of the charges that are specific to some of this, because it's only those residents that get to vote?
It is only those residents. We will send a bill to the city of Bloomington, and for those, we will send it's a percentage. So the percentage for who utilized this election, and of course, we will not know that until after Election Day. We can't prepare I can't give you an idea of the percentage for Ellisville versus the percentage for the city, but there's a formula that is derived by somebody above my pay grade that we will plug the numbers in for how many people took advantage of this, and we will send out bills accordingly. Is that a fair response to your question?
Yes, I appreciate that because I honestly did not know. I was looking at the numbers. The last local election, only a little over 10% of eligible voters actually stepped up and voted. And so I really appreciate the effort to get as many people out as possible.
And I want to be clear, we do the outreach ahead of that. That was certainly regrettable because we are set up and prepared to receive any and every person who is eligible to vote. Many times people don't want to vote in the primary, not wanting you to know their affiliations. Also, I think a lot of times people wait until the last moment. And in many ways, if you recall 4 years ago, a lot of the races were already decided because many people ran unopposed. And the statute says that they are to be sworn in as though they won on election day. So when people see that and they feel like, why bother? Why bother to get out? I surely don't want that. We don't ask for that, but all I can control is what my office can do, which is put those commercials out, put the signs out, let you know through any and every means possible that you're eligible to vote. And so I hope that all of you take advantage of those opportunities in your roles as well to let people know they can vote at this time if they're eligible. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the contract with Effect TV service agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, Clerk Brown.
Thank you.
Next item.
I move approval of an agreement with City Glass of Bloomington, Inc., fund names 2018-2019 Geo Bond, fund numbers 4811 and 4812 in the amount of $36,500.
Second.
And we have Mr. Kreider here.
Having a day. Sorry.
Are we all?
Good morning, Commissioners. Richard Kreider, Fleet and Facilities. During a recent storm, rainwater entered the east side of the Justice Building through gaps around the window frames and emptied into courtrooms, office spaces, and hallways. An inspection revealed that sealant has deteriorated and failed around the east windows. This request is to approve the proposal submitted by City Glass of Bloomington, Inc. to cut out caulking around glass, stone, and frames, and then to apply new Dow 795 black caulking around 64 windows on the east side of the Justice Building in the amount of $36,500.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Commissioner Jones?
No, I'm just glad this is being taken care of promptly.
Yeah, I echo that. This is another example of issues that are arising that have to be dealt with in our current Justice Building, and I appreciate the prompt and speedy response in addressing this. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Clearly, we have an aging facility. So, and I echo the sentiment of my colleagues that thank you for moving on this so very quickly.
Yeah.
It takes just a few days to even get this on an agenda to be looked at. So we appreciate that. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the City of Glass of Bloomington, Inc. agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, Mr. Kreider.
Thank you.
Next item.
I move approval and agreement with DLZ LLC regarding initial site review and evaluation, fund name 2022 ban capital fund number 4816, an amount not to exceed $10,000.
Second.
Mr. Cockrell.
Yes, I think I'm going to start with what this isn't, because I think last week you guys approved to go ahead and start negotiations for a master plan kind of attitude with DLZ. This is not that. This is much more akin to what we did when we were looking at Fullerton, where we had an agreement with DLZ to do some of the site inspection and site reviews, more to get a feel for what we could potentially put on property and what are the potential, things we need to look at as we move forward with site selection. We don't have any sites that we are going to start and say, hey, this is where we're going to do this work. This is just to prepare us for as we move forward. Once we get a couple sites or up to 4, and the up to 4 is based upon wanting to remain under $10,000 from a budgetary perspective. So if we come up with more, we'll have to amend the contract, but we thought 4 would be a good number to start with. And so working with the commissioners and of course the county council and trying to determine what sites to select. This is for the work that when we select a site, we look at it and we look at the zoning, we look at, size issues, we look at, buildable areas, those kind of things to get a better feel on some of the things. I know that this county council, the county council approved a memo that says things like at a location as close to existing surfaces as possible, that as possible can be interpreted a lot of different ways. And this maybe, and they also ask for additional data on the sizing in that. And so hopefully as we look at specific sites, we can answer some of those questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
No,
Mr.
I
Jones?
don't.
Commissioner Thomas?
No questions. Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who has a comment or anyone from DLZ? I have no comments. It was very straightforward again in our packet about what this is and is not. So with that, I call for a vote.
Sorry, I have a public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that there was a hand raised.
Oh, that's quite all right.
And who are you?
This is Seth Muchler, Monroe County resident.
Okay, you have 3 minutes, Seth.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually did not know that this was on the agenda until I was referencing your packet this morning. I understand you feel like there's a sense of urgency to move towards a new facility. I am concerned, given the recent question of the question of potential bias on DLZ's perspective and the questions that were brought up given the request for qualifications process. And I understand that this is not a master plan, but it is still the same company and it is work that would inform a master plan. So it's a little concerning to me that in the same week that we are discussing, and I know we'll get to this later, discussing potential an inappropriate way of selecting DLZ for the master plan and for architecture, that we're also then granting them a contract for a site selection. I just don't really understand. I feel like there are so many unknowns at this point. We still have not determined a bed size. We still have not determined how large a site. I mean, I feel like it's just so putting the cart before the horse to hire them to bring forward a site study when we don't know what even ballpark acreage we're looking at. I understand the 25-acre number has been thrown out, but at the CJRC, we were looking at, and I don't recall the name, forgive me, but a facility that was approximately 3 times the number of beds that we were even looking at as a maximum. And that was 23 acres, so still 2 acres short. And so it's just honestly, it's confusing to me why this is coming up at this moment, given especially the recent controversy, but also just given where we are in this process. I feel like there are so many things that need to be determined. And what I'm concerned about is that those determinations are being handed over to DLZ. And it seems obvious to me that they are incentivized to recommend larger sites, recommend sites that will support a larger construction. And I respect that the commissioners have the final authority, but they are the ones providing the recommendations. And so that's just concerning for me. I would hope that we would put a stay on this until some of the other issues have been sort of brought forward and resolved. So that would just be my ask. And yeah, that's my comment on this issue. Thank you for your time.
And if I could
Thank you.
respond to
Go ahead.
that,
Great.
from my perspective, this was placed on the agenda on Friday. So I think, some of the references to what happened on Monday, this was on the agenda prior to that. But I guess I want to make it clear that the county would tell them what sites to look at, and the county would tell them, to give us information on what we could do on those sites. This is not a recommendation to them on what sites you think we should use. This would be a recommendation on any of those things. This would be if the county determined we wanted to look at a site, and I think it goes back to a lot of the conversations, and the need for it is a lot of the conversations range anywhere from 9 acres to 25 acres. And, one of the things they teach us in law school is that every piece of property is different. And so, depending on the topography of the property, that number could change. You could put a bigger bed on a smaller facility if certain things exist. In my mind, one of the things that this would help us with is if we determine, hey, we think, here are 3 or 4 sites we really want to dig into. Will it work? To kind of answer if it's a 9-acre site, would this particular 9 acres work differently than a generic 9 acres that you are thinking of, right? So, or any, I threw 9 acres, you could pick any size, but it would be a way for us to evaluate questions. So when we get, and if the council commissioners and the county determines we want to look at this site, we can answer some of those. Is the size appropriate for that site? And so, I understand that there are some people questioning the 25 acres is a requirement. And, I've questioned it, right? But I think when you're talking about things in a generic, how much do you think you'll need for something versus here's a specific site, what can we do here? That's 2 totally different questions. And I think from what my understanding, the council and the committee, the CJRC, wants to know what can we do with some sites, right? And so we just need to figure out what sites we're talking about and get some evaluations going.
And I would point out that it's not clear to me that anything inappropriate was done, and also that the comparison that was referenced here was in Franklin County, Ohio, which is very flat and does not have the karst features and drainage issues that we have here. So I appreciate you pointing out the fact that every property is different, because the topography here is very different from what we saw in a lot of other places. And that is important with what goes on. If we put the facility close to services, there's going to need to be a lot of buffering and things like that go with it. So thank you for those comments. Anything else from my colleagues?
No, I don't.
I appreciate that he raised the question of inappropriateness, and I'm troubled by that, because anybody could say something is inappropriate, and I don't know, Mr. Cockrell, if you can address that comment, because that's not how we roll, and that's not what we do, and I'm concerned that that's being floated out there as a legitimate as a concern that's legitimized. I don't think that it is.
Well, I can say that the process of an RFQ to choose a design professional is not a requirement anywhere, right? The commissioners, if had the adequate appropriation, could have found anybody they wanted to, put them under contract to begin this work. They chose to go through a process so that they could get feedback about all the Indiana vendors that we knew about who do this kind of work, who design and master plan jail and justice related facilities. So an RFQ was sent out to those. They responded. That RFQ was looked at by a group of staff. You know, at the beginning of the process, the RFQ indicated that it was going to be the sheriff or his designee, one of our maintenance person, our contractor who does the current maintenance for the jail, a person in the legal department, and a person from the commissioner's office, to kind of give a kind of a broad-based review, looking more at probably did way more of the nuts and bolts of, can these people design a jail that is functional and that we can maintain, because those are big criterias, knowing that as the process moves forward and the actual design goes through, there's going to have to be a lot of input on other features that we would want to include in that facility. So that actually began in October, right? So that process began in October. I got 3 responses from the only 3 that we requested, because they're the only 3 that we were aware of that does this kind of work, that are located in the state of Indiana. And so that group did individual interviews for each of the 3 entities. That group did met, and you know, my understanding is that the sheriff designated 2 employees, and only 1 employee was at that meeting where it was discussed, and that group came to a consensus that 5 of the 6 came to the consensus that, you know, this is who we wanted to do. Here's our number 1 choice, and moving forward. The 6th one was not there. They did not. I have not heard any expression that this was a choice that they would not go with. And so I know that we've asked the sheriff to talk about some of these things, and so, you know, maybe they can clarify that a little bit. So the process is legal, right? The process was up above and beyond anything that would have been required of the county or the commissioners.
Well, and I think it's, I will note too, that it was the sheriff or his designee, that it does not mean more than 1 individual. And since there was 1 individual from his office who was definitely part of the decision-making, I feel that we also met that sort of part of our goal for including the sheriff with what was going on. Anyway, I don't see any other hands raised. So let's go ahead and vote on the agreement with DLZ LLC regarding the initial site review and evaluation. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, Mr. Cockrell. Next item, please.
I move that we approve the ratification of the VOCA grant, fund name VOCA grant, fund number 8121, and the grant amount of $129,002.43.
Second.
And we have Ms. Hamlin with us virtually. Good morning.
Good morning, commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
This is a request for ratification of signatures on our VOCA contract. It's a contract between our office, the commissioners, and the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute. And it was actually signed by DocuSign, which is the state's signature software for contracts, on or around December 9th. It's my error at the time because of the confusion surrounding the DocuSign process. I neglected to bring this forward to the commissioners at a public meeting for signatures. However, the contract was in fact signed on December 9th, and I just wanted to bring this forward for ratification.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, would you talk a little bit about what the VOCA grant is?
Yes, this grant funds a portion of salary for 4 victim assistants in our office that work with victims of crime. It's a statutory responsibility. The funding allows them to advise victims of upcoming court hearings that they may or may not want to be a part of. It helps them establish restitution as needed, helps them tap into state funding for violent crime compensation funding, and just whatever else the victims may need help with.
Thank you. That certainly sounds valuable.
Commissioner Thomas?
No questions.
I have no questions either. And I appreciate the fact that your office works to get these kinds of grants to help the residents here of Monroe County. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I call for ratification of the VOCA grant. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of the VOCA grant supplemental, fund name VOCA grant, fund number 8121, the amount of $3,915.
Second.
And
this
again,
is sorry.
no, please go.
This is a request for approval and signature for a grant agreement. With the VOCA grant process this year, they had a reduction in funding at the federal level. And so where we had been funded for training in the past by Indiana Criminal Justice Institute, we were not allowed to apply for that during the initial outroll of the request for grant with the original VOCA grant. They ended up having some supplemental funding at ICJI, and they freed up some money for applicants. We applied for the training, which is a National Center for Victims of Crime National Conference. And this will pay for 3 of our 4 victim assistants to attend that training in part.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Jones.
No, I have no questions.
Commissioner Thomas. I appreciate the fact that additional training is being made available to our staff. So thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, call for a vote on the VOCA grant supplemental. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Next item.
I move approval of NDOT's agreement Fullerton Pike Phase 3, fund name Fullerton Pike, fund number 8169, in the amount of $2,750,133.
Second.
And now for the biggest item on our agenda today, Ms. Rich.
Good morning. So this is agreement for federal funding to move forward with the Fullerton Pike Phase 3 project, which consists of a road and over a 500-foot bridge. This will be the final connection between I-69 and where Phase 2 ended, which is just west of the new roundabout on Gordon Pike by Rogers Street.
Questions or comments?
No, I don't.
Commissioner Thomas?
No, this is a huge project. I'm just, there's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. It's amazing. Finally moving to the stage. So thank you.
Yes, this is the third of 3. This one will complete it, right?
This will complete that connection.
And how long ago did phase one start? It's not a quiz. It's okay. It's been
Okay,
many
so
years.
Federally funded originally in 2008. It's when it became a project and when it was assigned a DES number. And Fullerton Pike Phase 1 was built in 2017 to 2019. Phase 2 was 2019 to 2020, and now we're to Phase 3.
And this is just for, it'll go to letting, so it'll still be a while before it's completed.
It'll take 18 to 24 months for completion.
So you have stuck with this project for over a decade,
Quite a long time.
maybe two. Is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, call for a vote on approval of NDOT Fullerton Pike Phase 3. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you for all that work, Ms. Ridge. I will note for the record, we have no appointments today. I'll note that all Monroe County government offices are closed this Friday, April the 7th. As Clerk Brown indicated, early voting for those who are residents of Bloomington and Ellettsville is underway. Early voting, you can either do that absentee by mail if you're eligible currently, or at 3rd and South Walnut Street at Election Operations. Primary day here in Indiana is Tuesday, May the 2nd, 2023. Free COVID testing is still available through our health department and through the Monroe County Public Health Clinic. We're still accepting appointments for boards and commissions. We continue to have virtual office hours 6 times a month. So if you wish to speak with one of us virtually, please get online. It's on our calendars. We have blood drives still. There's one tomorrow from 10 to 3 p.m. and one on Friday from 1 to 6. Both of those are at Ivy Tech. Or you can join next on Thursday, April the 11th from 10 to 3, or Friday, May the 12th again at Ivy Tech. Especially of note, given that we've just had this tornado go through, I want to remind everyone who needs help that you can contact your township trustee. And that's especially true for the people out in Bean Blossom. Your trustee is Ron Hudson, and information on all the trustees is posted at our county website and in our weekly minutes. Once again, I want to congratulate the IU women's team for an incredible season. We are so honored that Coach Morin and the staff and several of the players came to join us this morning. What a joyful event that was. And so I want to thank our staff also for making that possible, especially Dina DeLauder-Meyer, who was instrumental in getting them here and really putting together this whole thing. That's all I have, but anything from you, Commissioner Jones?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Okay, well, with that, we will adjourn this meeting and we will reconvene on Wednesday, April the 12th. We do have multiple items on our work session. It's now 11:17. Should we return at 11:30? Does that work? 11:30? Okay, thank you all for being here and we'll see you all in a bit. Thanks. Ma'am. Right, it is 11:31 on April the 5th. So I wish to call to order this work session of the Monroe County Board of Commissioners, and I will note for the record, all three commissioners are once again present in the Nat U Hill Room. And first on our agenda today is Drew Myers from Planning. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so first on the work session agenda, we have REZ-22-12, the Rolfson rezone, also known as Ordinance 2023-10. This went to the Plan Commission on March 21st, where it received a vote to forward with a positive recommendation of 6-3 with some additional conditions. I will touch on those at the end of my brief presentation here. Again, this just being a work session, I'm just going to go over some high-level stuff. I will have a more formalized presentation with PowerPoint slides for the formal session. Okay, so everything that you see in the red text throughout this Plan Commission packet was added to that last Plan Commission meeting. It's gone to 3 Plan Commission meetings. It went in January, February, and in March. So all of the red was the latest additions to the report since being presented, to the March meeting. So overall, the parcel is totaling 19.341 acres. It's in Bloomington Township at 4851 North Kinzer Pike. The petitioner is proposing to amend the zoning map from State Residential 1 to Agricultural Rural Reserve, and the intention behind this rezone request is to provide the appropriate zoning designation to establish a winery on the property. Now, the land use of a winery is not permitted in the RE1 zoning district. However, crops and pasturage are among a few other uses within that district. It is a Chapter 833 zone, so the Agri-R zone is a Chapter 804 zone, the difference being that 2-mile fringe area that has transitioned through time from the city of Bloomington's planning jurisdiction to the county's jurisdiction. Overall, if the rezone request is approved by the county commissioners, the petitioner intends to complete the planning process for the establishment of a winery on the property, which would include all applicable site plan requirements, including parking, paving, landscaping, building permits, grading permits, etc. That type of review, the commercial site plan review, would be performed administratively by planning staff. If the rezone is denied, the petitioner may continue to operate the property as a single family residence, which is the previous use that was on the site before this petition was proposed, or the petitioner may pursue any of the available uses as outlined in Chapter 833 of the Monroe County zoning ordinance for the RE1 zone, as long as any special conditions could be met. So the start of this process began with communication with the petitioner. He had recently purchased the property and had initial conversations with planning regarding the CDO map, the county development ordinance. He had reviewed on that map that this property was likely going to be rezoned into the Ag 2.5 district. That struck him, and he wanted to talk to planning about the possible zoning implications of that transition. Planning staff communicated to him that the Ag 2.5 district and that whole map that he was referencing was a draft, that it is subject to change, and that the Ag 2.5 proposed district in the CDO would likely mirror or be very similar to the Ag-RR district, being that there is plenty of room for changes from that moment to the full adoption of the CDO, which is some time away. The petitioner did initially have some grand plans for the property in full transparency. However, with communications through staff about the requirements for that type of use being more of a mixed use sort of thing, and that would be more of a PUD process, the petitioner scaled back and stated that they really just want to do a winery, and that there is, that is the primary use, that is the use of the property as a winery. There are definitions for event centers in the chapters. Chapter 801 and Chapter 813 offer some guidance on event centers. Chapter 802 in the Ag-RR district does allow for agricultural event centers. And I've included some information here from Chapter 813 about those types of standards. The plain definition of event center from chapter 801, you'll see it come up in chapter 802 as just those words, event center. That's different from the agricultural event center in that it's only permitted in the more urban districts like general business and I believe low intensity, or excuse me, heavy industrial or light industrial. So the petitioner does have some explanation of the types of activities that will be going on the property. So much smaller scale gatherings, typical uses that would be included with a type of winery. Through conversations, there has been a lot of conversation through the Plan Commission and members of the public regarding the property and the roadways that meet it. There's been a lot of discussion on traffic flows, as well as lots of talk about offering some conditions of approval in the form of a written commitment. The petitioner did provide a written commitment at the end of this packet that offers some guidance and certainties on what the property would actually be in the end. There is some restriction of uses from the Ag-RR district, as well as some other items such as types of events and that sort of thing. The comprehensive plan has this entire area designated as, see, it's kind of hard to see here, but it's farm and forest. And the current zoning map, if I can scroll back to it. Here we go. So it's currently zoned RE1, Ag-RR districts here in the northwest corner. I will also note that this map doesn't reflect it, but I will include a updated map in the formal presentation that this large 100 acre plus property that I'm outlining with my cursor, that was actually rezoned by the county commissioners to agricultural reserve in October of 2021. And that reason behind that rezone was to provide for the appropriate zoning to do a sliding scale subdivision. This property owner subdivided the property, created a small 2.5 acre homestead lot, and then the remaining acreage of the property is one lot with some designated or classified forest on it, I believe. Okay. The petition site is fairly flat. There's no real concern for slopes. There's no known karst. And the petitioner has also provided in the exhibits of this packet some renderings of what they have as an option for what the structures would be like on the property. Originally, there was some conversations from the highway department with the petitioner regarding the appropriate access. And there was some talk about getting access off of West Bell Road, which is to the south, along here my cursor is. And then also what the access points would look like, from North Kinser Pike. So it is the recommendation from the highway department through these conversations with the petitioner that the North Kinser Pike entrance is acceptable, trying to stay away from having too much traffic on this more residential road, of West Bell Road to the south. So I'm going over some high level things still here. There's no comments at this stage from Stormwater. They would review, their comments would come in through the commercial site plan review stage. Here's some pictures from the site. This is West Bell Road here to the right of the photograph. And then this is just a quick and easy picture of the entire site itself. There was an old farmstead structure on the property that has since been torn down. So the property is currently vacant. Here's all the findings of fact. And here we have the petitioner's letter and consent letter. Originally, when the petition was submitted, there was a other property owner, but since then, the petitioner is now the owner of the property. Here are some renderings of what they suspect the winery could look like. Again, it'll have facilities for distilling and processing grapes from the vines and vineyards that they'll have on the property, as well as tasting area and some other uses that are pertinent to the running of a winery business. Okay, I'm going to keep scrolling through some of these exhibits and see if anything else jumps out at me for today's work session. There's a lot of content in this packet. As you know, it's gone to 3 Plan Commission meetings. So each time there was more and more added. Hopefully you have the time to get through all this content and ask me any questions. I think I will open it to the floor for questions now and see what kind of discussion we can drum up.
I'm sorry, did you mention the conditions? Did I just miss that?
Yes, sorry, let me scroll down to those. So planning staff has maintained a recommendation of approval for this petition, being that it is in line with the comprehensive plan and the citing of the findings of fact and the recommendations of the highway department. But we do have some conditions of approval. Let me go back to. Here we go. So at the Plan Commission meeting, like I stated before, it was forwarded with a positive recommendation with a vote of 6-3, and with the following conditions. 1, the petitioner submit a right-of-way activity permit application that was speared by the Highway Department. That is basically a driveway permit. The Highway Department project manager needs to see that permit come through in order to evaluate the appropriate location of a new driveway, or if the existing driveway is acceptable given site distance, measurements, that sort of thing. Number 2, the written commitment be reviewed and approved by the Monroe County Legal Department. And number 3, kind of a subset of number 2, the written commitment include the additional language regarding a 14-day deadline for its recording. So in early meetings of the Plan Commission, the petitioner took the comments from the Plan Commission and under their recommendation created a written commitment that's included in this packet as one of the exhibits. And it basically, self-restricts the types of uses that the broad agricultural reserve district would allow. So they striked some of those uses from that list that would, be considered very like highly nuisance or just didn't fit with the nature of the area, as well as some other commitments regarding the business itself. But at this final stage of the Plan Commission meeting, we requested that some language be added to it regarding recording of that written commitment. The legal department has recommended that we include language about an automatic recording by staff, if you will, within a 14-day period if the petition were to be approved by the county commissioners. Just some buffer or some assurance that it would be recorded.
Thank you. Having been without electricity all weekend, I haven't really gotten through this yet, and we'll definitely want to look at it a bit more closely.
Commissioner Thomas.
I was among a no vote in the Plan Commission because the neighbors are very concerned about an event center. I think if I interpreted their comments correctly, I don't think they would mind a winery. I don't think they would mind a vineyard. I think it's the event center that worries them. And I think rightfully so. We've seen this happen in other parts of our county where event centers have really impacted neighborhoods in a negative way. And so I would like to ask the folks who live in that vicinity in Bell Road and Kinzer area, if they would review the proposed restrictions by the petitioner for times for the events and contact us via phone or email or drop by our office hours or come to our meeting when we actually hear this case and let us know if that's sufficient or not. And I think it really is up to the neighbors at this point, in my mind, because it is going to change their neighborhood. And I do not see this as fitting farm and forest, which is the proposed zoning for this area anyway. So I have concerns about that. But I just do want to ask the folks who live in that area if they would please reach out to us and let us know if they're satisfied with these self-imposed restrictions, and know that there's no way that we can address them if there's something goes wrong. If something happens, the person doesn't, they sell out, the next person comes in, they don't live up to those agreements. We have no way that I can think of requiring and enforcing that written commitment. That's my other concern. So I think the idea of a vineyard and a winery is lovely. I have no issue with that. My concern is the event center and the changes it will bring to a residential neighborhood that's been there for decades.
I also, when I looked at the difference between the event center activities and the agricultural center that was allowed, it looked like in the agricultural center, it could be up to 40 days of activity or events at the property. I wondered how that would ever be recorded or enforced to keep it at that maximum.
Yeah, so let me clarify here. There's 3 different types of land use classifications that are under discussion. One is the winery, which is defined in Chapter 802 here on the screen. That is its own land use classification. There are 2 other land use classifications: event center and then agricultural event center. Agricultural event center, that is something that is not being proposed here by the petitioner. Agricultural event center, some of the examples of that would be a wedding venue in the county, where they have to have some sort of farming or agricultural accessory use, whether that be a hay field or a sunflower field, something like that, that they are like cultivating, that there's some sort of agricultural component, but the main use of the property is an event center, hosting events. And Chapter 813, which is our conditional use chapter, that offers guidance on that particular use classification. Event center is defined in Chapter 801. That is a more urban style event center that is hosting outdoor activities such as weddings, receptions, banquets, corporate events. But again, it's only permitted in the general business district noted here. Winery is a completely separate use classification. The petitioner did go through the use determination process to determine, based on their provided information, which use would best classify, and winery was that particular use. And here in the definition, it talks about processing includes wholesale sales, crushing, fermenting, blending, aging, storage, bottling, administrative office functions for the winery, warehousing, retail sales, and tasting facilities of wine and related promotional items may be permitted as part of the winery operations. So I hope that offers some clarity between these 3 different use classifications.
So they are not asking for an agricultural center, event center? Is that?
Correct. They are not asking for an agricultural event center. They're asking for a winery. And some of the activities that they are proposing within the winery include tasting events, if you will. The petitioner has discussed the type of size of those things being small or intimate, as well as occasional, outdoor acoustic music or other small event type things like that. They do include some of this information in their written commitment, and the petitioner will be available during the regular session to answer any other questions regarding the extent of the use itself.
I also was a little bit concerned about the amount of truck traffic that would be on North Cancer, because with 19 acres, they probably are not going to be growing all the grapes that they'll be processing. So do we have any sense of what that's going to be, not only for bringing the grapes in, but for shipping out products?
Yes, the petitioner, I believe, has included that information in one of their exhibits. So Exhibit 5 is the petitioner's response to the Plan Review Committee, who was the first committee to review this petition. So there's some good information there, touching on some of the concerns that were brought up during the Plan Review Committee. Let's see here, and I think there's some other narratives included in this packet. Exhibit 9 has letters of support or opposition. Let's see here. There's lots of exhibits, so bear with me here. Let me go back to the top. Okay. Let's see here. The petitioner's letter, Exhibit 1, offers some background. Like I said, the written commitment offers some background as well. And then, let's see here. The petitioner's Kinzer Pike Road with and crash data narrative, Exhibit 7, that touches on some of the concerns that have been brought up by the Highway Department initially and some of the property owners in the area regarding truck traffic, as well as how many trucks they would be expecting, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to dig into it more deeply before we hear this finally also.
Absolutely.
Is there any other?
I would like us to wait a couple of weeks before we hear this at a regular meeting, just to give you all time to read this packet and think through it, and to give the folks in the area time to respond.
So do you have a date that you want to see it? Trying to find my calendar here real fast. Are you suggesting that it come back on April 19th or April 26th? Do you have a preference?
I don't.
Commissioner Jones? Why don't you bring this back to us on April the 26th, if that is agreeable to everyone?
Okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Myers. Appreciate
Thank you.
all
And of course, and if anyone has any questions remaining, feel free to reach out to me and I can get those answered.
All right, appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, we again have someone from Planning, Ann Crecilius, here to talk about ordinance 2023-11. Do we have Ms. Crecilius with us? Is she one of the panelists? There she is.
Good morning. Just got promoted. Thank you.
It's still morning barely, but yes, hi.
Yeah. Okay. So we have an outline plan amendment before you today, ordinance 2023-11. So this is the North Park PUD outline plan amendment number 5, and this is a change to section 8 of the outline plan, the street and alternative transportation guidelines section. So the petitioner is the Monroe County Redevelopment Commission and Kreider and Kreider Inc., and they're being represented by Bynum and Faneuil and Associates. Okay, so this is a area that involves a lot of parcels, but we would be looking at approximately a construction area of about 5.1 acres. So I'm going to jump around, of course, because we're here in the report. So this would be for the construction of a road connection within the North Park PUD. And this would be from North Curry Pike to West Hunter Valley Road. So this is the area illustrated in here. A large portion of this area is on PUD. It is approximately 2,500 feet of roadway. Let's see. So there's kind of two sections to this request, the outline plan amendment. The first section is a change to the section 8 specifically for this road connection. The second part of this request is that since the petitioner is already amending the North Park ordinance, they're going to go ahead and remove 3 road connections that are required within the North Park ordinance that they don't feel are necessarily required or really needed anymore. So this is the general area that we're looking at for the first section, the road connection construction. It will pass through an area of floodway. This outline plan amendment has been on kind of an accelerated timeline based on the planning administrator, the director's review. The redevelopment commission and the highway department have been working on this and their engineers for quite a while. So the road design is pretty well hashed out already. They've filed for a development plan only for the road construction. We heard the development plan and this outline plan amendment at the same time. We kept it on the same schedule. So the plan commission has already voted on the development plan. So if this outline plan amendment is approved, the development plan is also approved and it's conditional upon the approval. So again, going to jump back up. So we are looking at the first section change are for 4 standards in the street guidelines for the road connection only. So the first one is that the ordinance currently requires that 120 feet of right-of-way is dedicated the entire length of the road. This is just unobtainable in some areas. And I have another exhibit that from my PowerPoint at Plan Commission that I think is pretty helpful. So you've got a couple of links to the construction plans under the exhibits list. It's a really large document, so we include it as a hyperlink, but we do have this kind of overview of the road connection. So some of the areas that we're looking at. So here is the floodplain. There will be a precast bridge that will be put over Stouts Creek. This area has 120 feet able to be dedicated. Because there's so many property owners, a few property owners involved with this right-of-way acquisition, there is some need to vary the amount of dedicated right-of-way. So as we move forward, they were able to acquire approximately 90 feet of dedicated right-of-way. And then the next portion, it jumps down to 75 feet of dedicated right-of-way. And this is because there's a structure located. And so if the full 120 feet was dedicated, their part of the structure would be in right-of-way. So in order to avoid that, they're requesting a minimum of 60 feet. There is some leeway there and planning staff is supportive. As of right now, they're proposing 75 feet of dedicated. So they were able to not have to go as low, but the ordinance request would still include just the 60 feet. And we're fine with that and for having a little leeway if something changes when they do that right-of-way acquisition. The next portion, it jumps back up to 90 feet for the last section as it connects to North Arlington Road. So just an illustration of right-of-way dedication. Okay. The next 3 changes is a reclassification of roadway. So the North Park ordinance, it was the former director of the highway department included a very specific set of standards for street construction, and that is included as an exhibit in your packet. We would normally not always see this much detail for street construction because it is under the purview of the highway department. So some of these things, all of these changes actually are supported by the highway department as they've been outdated or just it makes sense for the area. So the next one is the North Park PUD had required that the road connection is designated as a minor arterial boulevard / secondary arterial. And the highway department has identified per the 2016 thoroughfare plan, they want to see this held to the classification of a major collector, those standards. So they're supportive of that change. The next is removal of street trees. So the ordinance requires that street trees are planted on both sides of the roadway. This is in the same section as where they talk about side paths and sidewalks. That will remain unchanged. In the construction plans, they do include a 4-foot sidewalk and also an 8-foot side path on the sides. The next one is reduction of speed. The ordinance requires that all streets have a minimum of 40 miles per hour speed limit. And just based on the design that they've agreed upon, the highway department and engineers, because of that curve on the east side of West Hunter Valley Road, they really can't get around that, and they've agreed to a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. Okay, so those are the changes specifically for the construction of the road connection. The next 3 changes, kind of under the group, is the removal of 3 road connections for this area. So under that memo, when this area was originally approved by the former director of the highway department, Bill Williams, he also included a really detailed section of road connections needed. So there are 3 in here that we are looking at that are at 20 some years later, we're saying is not necessarily needed anymore. So the first one is this road connection from State Road 46 North. It's supposed to come off of kind of an pre-existing driveway cut, which should stay the same, but it's supposed to go north and then in a cul-de-sac. They're proposing not to necessarily build this out. The engineer's reasoning is that this lot in North Park has, it's kind of constrained by a lack of buildable area. And if they can remove this required road section, it would allow a little bit more buildable area, and then they can design, the parking, the drive as needed. The next one is a connection from North Stone Branch Drive to West Bluebell Court. So they've done some work and they don't necessarily believe that this neighborhood desires a connection south, and the highway engineer supports removing this road connection. That Mr. Paul Satterley states that it would possibly encourage cut-through traffic from Curry Pike, State Road 46 in Arlington, and that cut-through traffic has negative impacts on subdivisions, including higher volumes of traffic and higher volumes of truck traffic and increased speeds. And then the final removal road connection, which you all are all very familiar with this part. So this is a road connection going south on North Stone Branch Drive and then looping through the Commissioner's Quarry property and then connecting again to Hunter Valley Road. Of course, we know that there have been multiple environmental studies that detail an environmental study that is detailed that the actual construction of this road connection would be very impractical because there are open quarry pits on the site. Again, the highway engineer, Paul Satterley, supports the removal of this and acknowledges that you as the county commissioners have shown interest in developing this site as a park. During the planning process, we have identified and requested that the petitioner provide a requirement that North Stone Branch Drive is developed with a cul-de-sac because it currently dead ends. So if this road connection is removed and the ordinance was left alone, that stub would just stay. So we requested that they propose a cul-de-sac, and they've included that language in the ordinance with a trigger so that if one of the adjacent sites starts to be developed, that the property owner is required to build out the cul-de-sac and finish it so it's safer for safety vehicles. Okay, that is the summary of this petition. Let me go down, make sure I haven't missed anything. So we do have the text edited. So these are the few pages of the North Park ordinance with the track changes that you'd see in Microsoft Word. We do have this, our goal is to, if this is approved, we will take these pages and sub them out just page perfectly for the new North Park ordinance instead of having, say, an amendment document. You can see all of the changes proposed just explicitly within the ordinance, but then the ordinance that will be approved and adopted will be the full North Park ordinance with those changes, because it's a 100+ page document for this area. Okay, so Plan Commission heard this March 21st, and they recommended sending a positive recommendation for this outline plan amendment to the county commissioners. They included a condition that the petitioner apply for a road name change in order to address the gap between North Curry Pike and West Hunter Valley Road. We had a very productive conversation about the history of road names in this area, history of the area. And so the condition originally had a little bit more finer detail, but we've settled on the petitioner should just apply for a road name change. Road name changes are under the purview of the Plan Commission. So based on our discussion at the last meeting, it sounds like the Plan Commission, when this is filed, they'll probably lean towards changing North Curry Pike to West Hunter Valley Road, but there's a lot of history there, and I believe the Monroe County Board of Historic Preservation will be involved with that. So let's see what else. Yeah, I believe that pretty much sums it up. Does anybody have any questions for me today?
Commissioner Jones. I'm afraid, once again, this is one that I wasn't able to read yet. So it certainly sounds interesting, and I've heard this kind of project being talked about for a while. So I'm interested in seeing how it works out.
I was just going to say, as staff for the Redevelopment Commission, I know pretty much all about this. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Also, Randy Cassidy, who is on the RDC, is here. And essentially, I think the goal of the RDC is to complete the Curry Pike to Arlington. And when we were doing that and looking at that, we knew that that was the impetus of this. And then when they brought this here, the one that goes through the quarry holes on the quarry in the area that we bought is pretty self-explanatory. The other two, I think I'd want to see the actual map in a little different context. We'll expand it out to be able to comment on those, but I think I know what they are. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I will note that Commissioner Thomas sits on the Planning Commission also and has heard about this. How does this fit with other development that is been talked about in North Park area?
Yeah, so go ahead.
You may be better to answer the other development outside the context of what we're looking at with the Redevelopment Commission. But with the Redevelopment Commission, there are still the two primary additional roads that I think we really see as valuable are the ones that connect to, you can, when you drive 46, you see kind of two stubbed out roadways. So they're still in the plan, those two roads connected to kind of the Curry Pike roadway. And so those I think are what we see as the kind of the next important ones. And I think we also see when that one of the roads that was deleted, when that property gets developed, I think that from a redevelopment commission, we think that should be part of the planning process on how that connection gets done. And I apologize.
Ms. Crecilius?
No, I wasn't sure who you're talking to. I was just going to mention that, yeah, this road connection is considered high priority by, of course, the Redevelopment Commission and Monroe County Highway Department. And that there are no development plans outside of for the road construction currently. But the North Park ordinance is set up in a manner so that the road, depending that these road connections are required to be built out when there are development plans. So we won't necessarily see development plans for these areas until, at least for the adjacent properties, until this road connection is built.
Commissioner Thomas.
One of the things that came up is the question of Hunter Valley Road versus Curry Pike. And I'm wondering if my colleagues would be willing to chime in on the proposal made by members of the Historic Preservation Board of Review to rename the part of Curry Pike from the roundabout with Smith all the way into the North Park area to put a proposal before the Plan Commission to rename that entire stretch of road Hunter Valley Road.
I very much like that plan. I do think that Hunter Valley is a pretty historic name in this community, and I would not want to see that name changed. And Curry Pike has a lot of functions as it goes further south. I think it would be pretty inconvenient for a lot of people to change that name. But changing it just to the roundabout won't really impact very much of anyone. So I like that plan.
I would be in support of that.
Okay, so Ms. Crecelius, if you would ensure that that gets before the Plan Commission, that we've made that recommendation, that would be really great. Thank you. Thank you both.
Is there anything else that we need to be thinking about with scratching our heads about on this one? How soon do we want to hear this back? I think we'd be safe if we also asked for this on April 26th. Are you okay with that?
I am. I think we have to make sure that the wording is correct on this so that we're not stepping on our own toes with renaming this road. So I just want to make sure that that's reviewed before we see it too. So.
Okay. We may be reaching out to you with other questions, Ms. Crecelius, but with that, please bring this proposal back to us on April 26th, and we'll see you then.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Next up, we have Lori Kelly from the Health Department to talk about Chapter 341 revisions.
Good afternoon. So this afternoon, we are proposing a discussion on changes to Chapter 341 and 310. There are a few key areas the Health Department needs to work out with Chapter 341 to be able to properly enforce and carry out the Commissioner's amendments to Chapter 310. So we are proposing to delay the Chapter 310 changes to March 1st of 2024. This will allow time for us to figure out many things such as a payment processing system and allow the markets to fall into the same licensing terms as the retail food establishments. And the department is proposing to include a seasonal food service establishment license of $85. This can be used by those who are operating 9 months or less out of the year. This term would also need to be added to our Chapter 341. Currently, it is not defined in Chapter 341, so we would need to insert that.
Comments and questions, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I thought there had been some discussion at our last meeting about it actually being for a year because there are markets year round.
Yes, so we are wondering if we should keep a seasonal market an option for those who operate 9 months or less. For example, if there are those that are just operating at the winter market for 5 months, or if we need to encompass all of them in the annual term, then that needs to be defined in our Chapter 341.
And Ms. Kelly can correct me where I'm wrong. But I think there are also people who had applied for under the old permit that aren't at the market. There are other users of that. And so to lump those into that market use, we thought was going to cause confusion. I don't think it changes anything in principle. What you did at last week's meeting is this is just making an addition so that other users who aren't at markets but do have these kind of seasonal activities have a way to apply. And that's what this is designed to do. Did I state that right, Lori?
Yes, we have a few. Hi, my name's Jessica and I work in foods. And just to clarify, we have a handful of people who are in a brick and mortar, but they only operate seasonally. For example, the Bloomington Speedway, Randsburg, stuff like that, Brewster's Ice Cream. We also have vendors who pop up seasonally for like football games, examples like that, which if we eliminate that option, they will no longer have a license to participate in.
Commissioner Thomas.
No, I think this makes sense and I'm fine with it as long as we've had legal review. I'm fine with it. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I know we kind of threw everybody for a loop when we changed things last week, but appreciate your flexibility.
So this is an addition to what we took care of last week. It's not a change from what we did last week.
Correct. We previously had the seasonal, so we're requesting to keep the seasonal and then we're redefining that and defining the suggestion that you guys made for the multi-market license. That way there's two clear definitions for people can either fit in the seasonal or the farmers can participate in the multi-market license. So it makes both parties happy.
And then we would just like to delay the time that this actually rolls out to allow us time to be able to set up, how we process these payments and how we're going to, set up and establish a good, clear plan. And so that everyone in 2024 can get started kind of on that same annual timing path.
Good. So bring this back next week for us to vote on. Be great. Does that need everybody's approval? Especially since we have a day off on Friday here. So it's good to get this planned for next week pretty quickly.
Yes.
So great. We'll see you back then on the 12th.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for explaining all this. Next up, we have Ms. Whitmer with the Parks Department.
I see a green light. Good, it's on. This is a very straightforward and reasonable request from MCCSC. They are asking that the commissioners grant approval of relocating the Cars Farm Greenway Trail in order to accommodate a new school track, which will also double as a car pickup and drop off for the parents. MCCSC has assured me in an email that they will pay 100% for the relocation and the preparation of a new easement, which I assume then I would bring back to you and you would accept the easement. But they just want to get going with design and so there's no delay because county legal has also recommended that I go to county council, which won't be for a few more weeks, to get the same approval.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, this does sound like a very reasonable request, and it's always nice to help out the school system where we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all in favor of this. Thank you for bringing it forward.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the easement is built back to the standard that the current one is. But I think that this will happen, and I agree with my colleagues that this is another way to support our school districts.
Also good news is that the MCCSC's engineer is Bledsoe Rigger Cooper James, which also does our trails. So everyone's quite aware of the standards and it will be built to identical to the one they're replacing.
Excellent.
Awesome. Excellent. So Jeff, what do I need to do? What do I need to do next?
Well, I guess in my mind, I think that in order for us to remove, basically what the the request is we're going to give up an easement and then we're going to get an easement. So I think we'd have to go through that process. The reason the county council is involved is we don't think this is over $1,000 either way, but we don't want to have to go through a process of getting appraisals and things like that, because that'll slow it down longer than anything. And again, it's the school, I think the only problem I saw with this is that are they going to have to move the mile markers at 5 feet from there to the end of time? But I think letting them know that then they can prepare the easement documents, both the we're giving it up and we're getting it, those easement documents, and then we can do it that way. We'll also need to work out how the construction is going to go, but I think there's nothing to vote on until we have the easement stuff.
Okay, I'll tell them that you're in support and they can start working. It's only a 40 feet difference and it won't affect our mile markers at all because they're actually not 100% precise now. So it's okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Should we take care of this item really quickly? We need to reappoint Guy Loftman to the Board of Zoning Appeals. His membership would expire on first Monday in January of 2026. Which I believe is January 1st, but
Did you just make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that the Monroe County Board of Commissioners reappoint Guy Loftman to the Monroe County Board of Zoning Appeals. His membership will expire the first Monday of January in 2026. Second. Any other discussion? I feel like we are very lucky that Mr. Loftman devotes his time and energies to these kinds of things. And so is there any discussion whatsoever? If not, I call for a vote on reappointment of Guy Loftman to the Board of Zoning Appeals. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. We'll get to Mr. Parker in just a second. We have some, go ahead, Mr. Schilling. Go ahead. This is very quick, I think.
Yeah, just on that last item on the Guy Loftman issue, if you could timestamp that as well on that document, that would be helpful. This is proposing a letter to Jeff Stant of the Indiana Forest Alliance, thanking him for his efforts on behalf of the nature-loving public in regards to the Houston South case. He was a major contributor to that, and things have gone very well from the county's perspective in that case. Recently, the U.S. Forest Service has withdrawn its supplemental information response to that case, which will probably moot out the county's second lawsuit against the Forest Service. So that was good news. It'll save everybody time and money and hopefully get the Forest Service focused on the environmental impacts of their proposed projects again. As part of this process, the county was able to obtain a preliminary injunction against the Forest Service for proceeding with the Houston South project. And as part of that process, the court required the posting of an $11,596 bond, which essentially was a letter stating that if the injunction was lifted in the future, that the county and the parties would pay that amount to the Forest Service. That bond letter needed to be submitted before Saturday, April 1st. And because the county is subject to notice requirements and so forth, we weren't able to put that together. So the Forest Alliance, the Indiana Forest Alliance, stepped in and provided that letter. So we wanted to let them know that if that letter should ever be called, if that security bond should ever be called, that the county would participate in that as well. And just while I'm up here, I would say thank you to the Friends of Monroe and their people who did an amazing job. Is it Sherry Brooker Mitchell? Yeah, I had filed some extraordinary supplements for the preliminary injunction and the Hoosier Environmental Council as well. So thanks to those groups as well. So I just present this letter to you and you can give it some consideration.
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we fulfill the requirements of this letter to provide a security bond if needed regarding the Monroe County Board of Commissioners, et cetera, versus U.S. Forest Service case as noted on the document.
Second.
I would point out to people that one of the reasons that Monroe County participated in this suit is that we felt that any activity in the Houston South area of the National Forest was detrimental to the water quality in Lake Monroe. And so I thank my colleagues and people on the county council for making sure that this happened as well. And again, I also thank the various members, various community groups that joined us in this. I think it was very important. And so I am very much in favor of supporting this.
It's not over yet, but it's certainly moving in the right direction and appreciate everybody, especially Mr. Schilling, about everybody in legal who's worked on this. So thank you.
Is there any other comment on this?
I think you need to take public comment.
Waiting. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, call for a vote on approval of the letter to Mr. Jeff Stamp. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Schilling. Motion passes 3-0. Okay, now we have. Oh, okay. Okay. So thank you. Stamp this. Where? Oops, upside down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I need to write the time down. Well, I'm pretty sure it was 12:23 p.m. So, okay, we'll get that done. Okay, all right. So we have Mr. Parker, who's here to talk about points from, I guess it was the CJRC meeting on April the 3rd. Thank you for waiting patiently. This has been a long day.
Yes, it has. Okay. My ask here is very simple. Everybody's aware of the email that the
Is the mic turned on?
yes.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Yeah, really. Yeah, it's hard to hear and it has to be picked up by cats.
My request is very simple. Everybody's aware of the email that Sheriff sent out on April 3rd. The email was pretty detailed, laid out some concerns that the sheriff had with the selection process involved in the selection of the architectural design firm. At the end of that email, there were 9 bullet points, and I was hopeful that at this meeting, we could address and answer each of those 9 bullet points in the interest of transparency. The sheriff would have been here himself. However, he was scheduled to instruct a cultural awareness for law enforcement that's been on the books for months. He's got numerous police agencies involved there, and it's something that he just could not cancel. So I am only here to see if we can rectify those bullet points, see if we can get those answered so that the public will be aware of exactly how this occurred and exactly how, from our perspective, the information that has been put forth about this process appeared to be a very quick, concise, no dysfunction, everybody agreed, when in fact that wasn't the case. So I'm only here to see if we can have that discussion.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you say that last sentence again?
Well, I'm only here to see if we can have that discussion. Is that the sentence you're talking about?
No, you said something about, we thought that
Yeah,
there was.
it appeared from all of the discussions we've had about this process, about the vote, the unanimous vote and all that, that everybody on the committee was in lockstep. There was no dysfunction on the committee about that process. That everybody was in agreement. The vote was unanimous, all of those things that occurred, and that's simply not true. So hence the bullet points.
But none of us were there. None of the three of us were there. So I don't know how we can answer any questions about it. That's
Well,
my concern.
that's one of the questions, is how did the commissioners come to assess when you made those statements that this vote was unanimous? And I think, there's one of those that said all of the people on this committee voted for DLZ. That is not true. There was no mention of anybody in the public. If you ask any member of the public right now, would they know that two of the members of that committee, because they were concerned about how this committee was, the process of this committee coming to that decision, didn't even submit a score sheet. None of that information was put out to anybody in the public. It was simply, there was a unanimous vote, everybody was happy about it, drive on. And that didn't happen.
So it's my understanding also that the sheriff had a designee. That's singular, not plural. And while two members of his staff did attend some of the things, to me, that would indicate that only one of those should be voting at that time. And like the three of us, it's my understanding that you were also not part of that process and that you were not in these meetings. So we're all operating from secondhand information. Or third.
I
None of us
disagree.
were party to that. Also, as Mr. Cockrell pointed out earlier during our formal agenda, that we are not required by law to undergo any of this kind of process whatsoever. We could have done this without input from people that we feel have better knowledge than we do about what needs to go into selecting a group to do this. And finally, I will point out that it wasn't just the interviews that took place with the three companies, but we have posted information on the CJRC website, at least about the written information from DLZ. So everybody has written information too that could be used for their evaluation.
I agree. The process wasn't required. But when you have a process, the process needs to be pure. The process, the end result of that process needs to be accurate. The end process of that needs to be truthful. It needs to be transparent. So you say that, yes, there was one designee, but if you look at the agenda for March 8th at the special meeting, it lists 6 people. It lists all of the individuals, and it lists Matt Demings, who is the other person. So that has been established. Everybody in the public, myself included, thought that the committee consisted of those 6 people. It's right here on the agenda. I brought it with me if you care to see it. So when you say all the people in that committee, 6 people are listed on the committee, including Matt Demings, that means that all 6 of those people, if you're sitting out in the audience, they all 6 voted. I think that's fair that anybody would have assumed that. What we were expecting when this was announced was that those things would have been disclosed, that we had a committee, we had a vote. Just when I go to any council meeting, there's a roll call of the members there present. And, I've heard this, that, okay, if there's a unanimous vote, it's the members of who are present that are voting. I agree with that. I completely agree with that. But what happens, there's a roll call that says there's 7 people on this board. Let's use the council. if someone is not there, it's noted that, Councilperson Smith is not present. So now when there's a unanimous vote or any type of vote, that person will always be excluded publicly that they did not participate in that vote. So what I expected and there were emails exchanged back and forth that Kyle Gibbons was having reservations with this, but we charged forward. There was never a score sheet submitted by Kyle Gibbons or Matt Demings. We charged forward. Now we have the announcement. What would have been the transparent thing to do is we had a vote. One member was not present. He did not vote. The rest of the voted was a unanimous vote. You should also know that 2 members of this committee did not submit score sheets. That's what happened. That is the truth. That is the transparent thing to do. But what really should have happened, is if there is disagreement, either disband the committee and exercise your statutory right as you were going to, or at least before this is announced in such a public way that it was all unanimous, put the disclaimers on it. Our question here is, did you know those things? As commissioners, did any of you know that Kyle Demings or Kyle Gibbons and Matt Demings didn't submit a score sheet?
And were you at the meetings where they submitted the score sheets?
No, my guys have told me they didn't submit them.
Okay, we've heard something other reported to us at one of the meetings.
I'll bring Kyle Gibbons and Matt Demings in here if you want.
Yeah, I think.
This isn't according to it.
Yeah, I think one of my concerns is that there's this implication, and just to make sure everybody's aware of what happens. There seems to be this implication that we've all been in on some big process behind closed doors. We heard from the committee at a work session here in this room. That is, and the members of the committee were sitting in the gallery during that time. And nobody said, I don't agree, I didn't support this. It's not unanimous, because it was reported at the microphone by a member of the committee that was unanimous. Our job isn't to go back and say, oh, now I want to hear each of your votes. So we got a report. So we have a report and we got that report. What happened here is what we know. Because we purposefully stayed out of this. Because we wanted the folks who are involved in maintaining the building, our building fleet, our administrator, your department, we wanted those folks to be the ones to review the submissions. And I know Jeff has something to say. I know Ms. Pretty has something to say.
Let me address that real quick. That's a very important point. And I will tell you this, when that decision was made, we were all sitting right back there. And Matt Demings leaned over to me and said, that's not true. I did not vote. That is not a unanimous vote. And you know what I told Matt? I said, Matt, there's got to be some type of misunderstanding. Let's not make a big public stir about it right now in a meeting. Let's see if that's corrected. Then we had the other meeting where Seth Musler made his comments. And I thought, well, there's an opening too. Nothing there. Then when we had the final decision, again, and all of this is spelled out in this email if you've read it, the sheriff was watching and waiting to see if this was going to be corrected. I think it would have been, was it the right thing to do to stand up at that meeting and say, hey, wait a minute. But I promise you, that would have created an issue where everybody would have been looking around the room at each other going, what is going on? At that point, it was our true belief that there was some type of a misunderstanding and it would be corrected later. It never was. It never was.
I never heard from Matt Demings as to the fact that he felt that there was a problem. We cannot act on anything or respond to anything when we are not given information.
But someone on that committee knew that. Is it our job to relay that?
If Matt was on the committee, he
Speak
should
into
have.
this because you're accusing me of this. And I did tell the commissioners that we did not get a response from Mr. Deming
Okay,
or Kyle. The score sheets that are being referenced in this situation, when we met to go over those score sheets, we all met as a group. Matt wasn't there.
that's correct.
Matt also had missed a prior, he left a prior meeting of one of the respondents. There would have been a conversation of whether or not he could even vote because he did not finish that interview. We didn't vote. We didn't talk about that either, right? The 5 people who were there, we walk in, myself, 2 other people have completed score sheets. Score sheets are designed to help people objectively define and determine, compare each entity against one another using the same standards. I explained that to the group that was there. We had a great conversation. When we got in, we talked about everybody, I think initially just kind of said, who do you think's your first one? Who's your number one? Everybody had the same answer. Everybody said DLZ. Your person who was there brought his score sheet. He didn't have it filled out, but he filled it out during that meeting. So we're in there, we're talking, we're all having a wonderful conversation, very collaborative, very informative. It was a nice meeting. At some point during the end of that meeting, there was a question of, so what do we do with these score sheets? Legal, who was there at the time, said, we don't need to keep them. Okay, I don't know, I don't recall if your employee handed me his score sheet or if he took it and threw it away himself. I don't know that. But if he did hand it to me, he handed it to me knowing I was going to go put it in the trash can. So your issue here is you're questioning whether or not I informed these commissioners that Matt Deming wasn't there. Yes, I did. I also informed them that when I asked for, because then let's go back. So then Jeff was gone during all this and he comes back and he says we should have kept the score sheet. Like, okay. The score sheets were sent electronically. In theory, mine was still electronic. I just had to, put it in another file folder. And so it was just a question of, hey, we need to have these now. Can you please fill them out and send them back to me so that we have them? It was clear that your staff was not going to complete those score sheets. I brought it up. We talked here. We asked Jeff to talk to you guys because of the relationship that exists between our offices and to try to resolve and alleviate any problems that may be occurring with that request to recreate their score sheet. Matt never did a score sheet. He never said boo at any point in time. Nobody in your office that was part of this group ever raised any questions until after you guys did the presentation to CGRC about the jail. And after I had requested the redo of the score sheets. The score sheet, they should have been able to go in and score it right then. They, presuming, of course, if Matt actually had, because I'm actually not even sure he attended the last one, but I may be wrong on that. I've tried to find out and I can't find out. But I do know that he left early in one of the presentations. And I knew at that time that was going to affect whether or not he could even be considered in it. We didn't have that conversation because he wasn't there. And yes, I'm the one that made the mistake of saying it was a unanimous vote by the group that was there. There's nothing that said we had to have a score sheet. The vote was taken verbally. We talked about it verbally. When I asked for the score sheets, it was just so if any of the respondents wanted to see or understand why we chose the way we did, then we have a hard copy to show what it was. I'm the one who made the mistake of saying it was a unanimous decision. It was unanimous of the 5 people that were in that room.
Okay, let me address a couple of things there. I don't know how many interviews I've ever been involved in my career, but it's in the thousands. We're interviewing prospective troopers throughout my entire career. Never, ever in the history of me being involved in any interview process was the scoring criteria developed and sent 11 days after the interview. How do you score someone appropriately if you don't even know you're going to be scoring them later and you're not advised that you're going to be scoring them, you don't make any notes, and then all of a sudden 11 days later, you're given this score sheet to score these people? That's where Kyle Gibbons got off the rails and sent you the email.
Because I'll tell you what, we talked about it in between these interviews.
You score during an interview. You score after the
No, you
interview.
don't. You don't have
Yes.
to. Well, sir,
Yes.
that is your option.
I'm gonna, this is not a good
Thank you.
It's
way
not.
to resolve an issue.
It's not.
I was going to bring up a question before, because I wanted to make sure I understood what you're saying correctly. You had talked about this decision, right? And I guess that there wasn't a consensus on the decision. Is the decision you're talking about the score sheet and utilization of it, or the ultimate recommendation?
It's both. I mean, the way this is, if you talk to anybody out there, I promise you, they're going to say, wow, that process, everybody on that committee that was there doing this process, during this process, was absolutely in agreement with everything that occurred. Our objection is that none of these things that we're talking about here were ever mentioned. It was simply unanimous vote. We're great. Let's move on. That's not what occurred. There are emails in here where Kyle Gibbons said, I am uncomfortable submitting score sheets after the fact. Okay, if that's the case where you don't have to do them during the interview, I've never seen it done that way. I can tell you that. I don't know how you can accurately do that, but that's an argument for another day. My point is that if this was done completely transparently, we would have made those known, as opposed to just saying the entire process, everybody was in agreement. They weren't. It's not true. It's not a true statement.
I would like to get a statement from Attorney Lee Baker on some of the items that you're raising here. And I think part of this is semantics. If we have an account of who all was present at the meeting when the initial vote was taken, and there were 5 individuals at that initial one, and we know what the vote was, then that was unanimous for those who were present at the meeting.
I
And
agree.
we can record and we can report to the public who those individuals were. We're talking about the vote. We're not even talking about the scoring sheet.
I agree, it's semantics. And then the semantics are, it was an illusion that this was a unanimous vote. It was an illusion that this entire process was completely done in a manner that everybody was in agreement on. It's important. It is important. I bet you talk to anybody, they're going to say, is it important that 2 of these members were concerned with how this committee was doing their business? They were so concerned that they did not want to score after the fact. That's important.
And it's important to me to acknowledge or to point out, at least this is my understanding. I would be happy to be corrected, but it's my understanding that Mr. Gibbons was uncomfortable completing a score sheet when he was asked to recreate what he had done
No.
in the
Yes.
meeting. You
No.
were not present at the meeting, so please do not tell me what
I
did
can
or
read
did
his
not
email
happen.
to you if you'd like.
You can read his email, but I'm saying that you were not present at the first meeting when score sheets were filled out. So you do not have firsthand knowledge as to whether or not he filled out a score sheet in that particular meeting.
Then I will bring Mr. Gibbons to a meeting and I will have him stand right here and tell you he did not complete a score sheet, if that will be helpful. And then someone's going to have to make the decision of who's telling the truth.
I would think that the best resolution of this would to be have the committee meet all 6 members and go through the decision process and see if it's still fresh in their mind, whether they can. This is the first I've heard that the ultimate decision of DLZ being the proper one is questioned, right? This is the first I've heard of it. I think the way to resolve this is to have that committee meet or have that group meet. We'll notice it, open public meeting, have them do that work, decide if they can do that work at this point. And if they can, great. If they can't, I think we should redo all the interviews.
And I would ask that if Mr. Demings were not present for all of the interviews, that he excuse himself from that meeting, because again, single designee was requested, not multiple.
Can I
And,
also say something?
yes,
Because,
of course.
you know, it's difficult when you don't have anything that I can hand over and say, this is what happened. But when we were in that meeting, I was concerned that Matt wasn't there. And Kyle said that Matt shared the same opinion as Kyle. And I actually even asked, do we need to have another meeting? It was determined that that wasn't necessary. And everybody walked out of there understanding and believing the recommendation is going to be for DLZ.
Angie, I am not saying that the recommendation for DLZ is the wrong recommendation. I'm not saying that at all. There is no beef from anybody here about DLZ being the company that was selected. It's the manner in which the transparency of that process was presented in multiple meetings. And that the manner in which it was presented is not.
And did anybody
Based with
think to
facts.
just pick up the phone and say, look, we have a concern about how this has been presented? Not one person.
Again, I've explained that also, that when we had that meeting, we fully expected. We were sitting right back there.
Well, you know, people
That-
don't have crystal balls.
That would be explained. I don't have one either.
Right.
That it would be explained. It wasn't explained. I told Matt, I said, there's got to be a miscommunication here. So we stood down. Then the same thing was presented, knowing all along that it wasn't based in fact.
In hindsight, doesn't it seem like this is a way worse way to do things? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, wouldn't it have made sense to say something at the time? I think Mr. Cockrell has a good idea. But
The other thing that I think
defer to
is
my colleagues.
worthy of,
I just don't think that we're having a conversation and arguing over what happened at a meeting that none of us were at. And I'm not sure that this is productive for that reason. I get what you're saying, and I'm hearing you, and I'm
right.
processing all of it. I just don't know that this is a productive way to resolve anything. If none of us were there, of the 4 of us, we weren't there, so I can't make a determination and so.
Well, and another
I would
thing I
like to
think,
respond to one of the 9 items that are raised in this, as you asked us to do earlier. Yes, we were aware that Matt Demings did not participate in the vote for this.
thank you.
But that still does not take away from the fact that of those who were present, it was a unanimous decision.
It's not a unanimous decision if everybody doesn't vote.
If he's not, you've already raised the fact, you gave the example yourself.
This is a
This is
definitional
great.
question, right? This is a definitional question. I think we all agree that the 5 members present voted for that. And that the 1 member who wasn't there did not vote for that, but didn't vote against it either. I think
Agreed.
if we're going to sit here and argue about what the definition of unanimous is,
I'm not arguing that. I'm arguing that we should have disclosed that.
feels like that is
No, I'm not arguing that. I'm arguing that we didn't disclose that. It was any meeting you have, you articulate who voted yay and nay. Look at the minutes. You articulate that. It was never disclosed.
I think it's safe to say that it has been disclosed now.
It has
right?
been disclosed
Right?
now.
I think everybody would acknowledge that the 5 members present voted for it. The 6th member was not present and therefore did not participate in the vote. I think that is clear right now, right?
It is, but only because we brought it forward here. It would have went into the annals of history and no one would have ever known.
And
that's not transparent. That is not transparent.
My feeling is that would have been great to know that that was a concern.
Yeah.
If not at the initial presentation, but also at the commissioners meeting. And we can talk about that, right? I appreciate that concern has been raised. I really also think that my concern has a lot to do with did the decision reflect the course of action we're taking, right? The commissioners last week approved for me to negotiate an agreement with DLZ, right? The firmness of that decision is what I think is why I made the thought, hey, get the committee back together and see if that's still the case. I guess you pointed out a couple errors. One is I think we just acknowledged what that means now. And the other is with the scoring, and I don't know, and I think the committee who is in charge of producing that result should be the ones who talk about that result and then forward that information along.
I'd also like to add that I was not the facilitator of this committee. That was no designation. We were all appointed equally. When I came up with a score sheet, it's because nobody else did. So I wasn't the one who was in charge, if you will. We were all equally there.
Well, all I know is that every email that ever existed that I could find about this came from you.
Of course, because nobody else is.
Well, that would need to indicate that you're facilitating it. Here's the other thing I wanted to say. It's not the decision, it's the process that was reached, and the lack of transparency in that process is that we're having issues with. Again, why wouldn't we have stood up here and said, okay, listen, here's what happened. 5 of the 6 members voted, 1 of them was absent. We had 2 of our members that, because of whatever reasons, they may have had in their heads, whatever it was, that did not submit score sheets. I just don't understand why the absolute truth is such an issue here that we just tell the public, here's what happened, instead of Mr. Kreider standing here and saying it was a unanimous decision, and there was no mention made of these issues that occurred in the committee. And as the sheriff said, the commissioners, being very excited about the fact that it was a seamless process, when in fact, I think had this information been transparently transmitted to the public, we would have had no issues at all. No issues at all.
So this was presented at a work session. It wasn't until at least a week later that we voted on this at a public session. Your office, Sheriff's Office, had an opportunity for a whole week to raise these issues and decided for whatever reason not to do that. This could have been corrected without all this brouhaha and
Behind closed doors.
unnecessary finger pointing.
Behind
that
closed
I do not
doors.
appreciate.
Behind closed doors.
If I would have gotten information that the sheriff's office was uncomfortable with the statement made at the work session, then the statement made at the regular session would have reflected those concerns, right? The behind closed doors is not, I'm trying not to, because in my mind, the statement of a unanimous vote when everybody who was at present voted for it is not an incorrect statement. I hear that that was a concern of the sheriff's department. I also don't have a problem with, hey, we had 6 people who went through, who were a part of the interviews. Only 5 of them were at that meeting, but of the 5, this is what the vote. I mean, to me, that is something that it would have been easy to address and easy to discover, right? I hear that there additional are concerns about the scoring sheets and all that. And in my mind, that's have another meeting of that group and let them resolve those. You're telling me that they were uncomfortable. Why all these kind of things that I know you weren't there. You can't answer. So I guess I hear what you're saying. I hear what the commissioners are saying. I think that in my mind, the issues you brought forward are ones of the committee. And why wouldn't we just let the committee meet and resolve those issues if they can? And if they can't, they can't, right? I guess
I think we already have voted on whether or not to name DLZ to this process. I think is all in the past. I think one of the things that I would like to take from this is that we need to ensure that we look at different processes going forward. But for me, the decision is already made. We have acknowledged that Matt Demmons did not participate in the vote. We have acknowledged that of those who were present for the vote, it was a unanimous vote. We can report it out as a 5-0 vote. We're doing this publicly here today. But I don't see the point in rehashing this. That's my opinion. I'm one of 3, and I'm stating my opinion publicly here.
I think it would be useful to have Mr. Baker address, because he was present, just to have him address the questions that have been raised. I understand the point that if somebody's not there, they're not voting, but they weren't absented through anyone else's actions. They absented themselves. And so I don't know how that is impactful in terms of a decision, because if I don't attend a commissioners meeting, I can't come back later and say, you know, I don't agree with the vote because I should have been here.
And
So
the fact that you weren't there would be
but
noted.
if I might, so I would like Mr. Baker, because I think, just to be fair to all of us, I think if Mr. Baker can provide the information, I think that's a good first step. And then we can see if there's a need to recall the committee together for any reason. We can ask Mr. Baker to consider that question maybe.
I would like to know what it is you want. What is your goal?
Our goal
Mhm.
is that when we do something like this, when we make the public aware of what happened and what happened, we tell them what happened in the full truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. In other words, we tell them there were 6 members on this committee. 5 of them voted, 1 of them was not. Instead of saying all the people on that committee voted for DLZ. The second part is that when there are concerns enough that people say, hey, I'm not going to submit a score sheet here because I'm not comfortable submitting a score sheet that was given to me 11 days after the interview, that we acknowledge that in the public forum, that 2 people didn't vote, instead of making the appearance that the whole thing was all agreeable.
Kyle's concern was when I asked for him to resubmit it There were no concerns prior to that. He said he wanted to talk about it at the meeting. But his concern regarding the process was stated when I asked for them to resubmit.
And I want to make it clear that the submission of the score sheet is not a vote, right? It's not a vote, right?
The submission of the score sheet.
You said, and I saw it because it's on the transcription, that you said that two people did not vote. And I think that is.
No, one person didn't vote, two people didn't submit score sheets.
And I think that is accurate. But I
Yes.
just wanted to make sure that the score sheet and vote are two very related in my mind issues, but they're not the same.
Yeah, I just think it's important that when we made the public announcement of this, that all of that was included because it's true. It's the truth. We should never have any trouble with the truth.
And in my mind, part of the responsibility for making that correction was on the sheriff's department. We don't have that knowledge. You have the knowledge. You were the people that failed to share that with us.
You didn't have
So-
the knowledge that score sheets weren't submitted.
We have not seen the score sheets for a lot of reasons, but I want to talk about moving forward. Nothing is going to change about the selection of DLZ. We all agree that the people that voted was unanimous. And so for those folks, it's done. It's done for us in terms of who we selected. It's not going to change anything. If you think that there are processes that need to be improved within Monroe County, I would like to see a written proposal from your office on what that should be.
It's right there. It's already been submitted to you.
That is not a proposal for how to improve a process. That is a lot of questions and a lot of demands.
Be
I would like to
transparent.
see a proposal if you were willing to do it.
It wasn't the process, it was the transparency of the process. I don't think anybody needs to explain that.
Okay, well, thank you.
It was not intended. There was absolutely zero intention to mislead anyone. And so if you had stated to us at any point in time after that initial work session, hey, we would like it on the record, like, okay. There was absolutely zero intention to mislead anybody.
I explained that when
Okay.
that work session was, we were as surprised as anybody.
And you had a week after that to correct the record.
And
I
we
think we're
were,
just rehashing a lot of things.
yes, we are.
And so at this point, I'd like to call to adjourn the meeting. Thank you for your attendance today and
Thank
for your
you.
patience.